I'm walking through the Reformation series that Desiring God put together to give you a fuller history of Christianity. Join me.
So when you think of the Reformation, who comes to mind? Probably Martin Luther, right? The fiery theologian who kicked the whole thing off. But have you ever stopped to wonder how a revolutionary idea like that actually sticks? How does it go from a spark to a lasting institution that literally shapes the world for centuries? Think about it like this. A wildfire is incredibly powerful, but it burns out. A hearth, though, that provides warmth and light day after day because it has structure, it's contained. The Lutheran Reformation needed someone to build that hearth, and that's who we're talking about today, Johannes Bugenhagen. All right, let's start with the story most people know, if they know him at all. And it's a great story. It's the tale of Bugenhagen as this incredibly loyal, steady pastor, the indispensable right-hand man to Martin Luther himself. I mean, for more than 30 years, he was the pastor in Wittenberg, which was ground zero for the Reformation. You had Luther, the genius theologian, and his friend Melanchthon, the brilliant scholar. And then you had Bugenhagen. He was the shepherd. He was so close to Luther, he actually married him and Katharina von Bora. He baptized their kids, and he was even the one who heard Luther's private confessions. By all accounts, he was a quiet but absolutely essential pillar of the movement. His most famous legacy was something called the Kirchenordnungen, or church orders. You can just think of these as the literal blueprints for the new Lutheran Church. I mean, they laid out everything from how to run a worship service to how to educate pastors. It was the stuff that gave the movement a practical, on-the-ground reality. When Luther died, Bugenhagen preached at his funeral, and this was his prayer as he wept. It's a plea from a heartbroken, devoted pastor who was all in on the cause and the people he served. And this, right here, is the Bugenhagen of legend. Loyal, pastoral, and totally steadfast. But that's not the whole story, not even close. As with pretty much any great historical figure, the simple, heroic version tends to leave out the most fascinating parts. Because when you start to peel back the layers on this simple story of a local pastor, you find someone way more influential, way more complex, and, frankly, far more interesting. So let's just break down the legend here. The basics? Yep, totally confirmed. He was Luther's pastor, a loyal friend, all true. But his work gets really simplified. People say administration, but this wasn't just filing paperwork. This was a high-stakes political game, a constant balancing act. And then there's the stuff that gets completely omitted from the story, like his massive international influence. So yeah, he wasn't just tending a little local garden in Wittenberg. He was the architect designing the entire estate. Let's dig into the real-world impact of Bugenhagen, the builder. Those church orders we mentioned, they were so much more than guides for hymns and sermons. They were radical social documents. He was mandating schools for all children, not just the rich ones. He was setting up social safety nets for the poor. He was creating professional standards for the clergy and even laying out a whole vision for public ethics. This was social reform on a huge scale, and he embedded it right into the DNA of the new church. And his work went way, way beyond Germany. In 1537, he gets invited to Denmark, and he doesn't just advise them, he literally crowns the new king. Then he spends 2 years single-handedly organizing the entire church structure for both Denmark and Norway. He became known as the Apostle to the North, and his blueprints shaped Protestantism all across Scandinavia for centuries to come. So what was fueling this incredible drive? Well, like a lot of the reformers, Bugenhagen truly believed he was living in the last days. But for him, this wasn't a reason to panic and run for the hills. No, it was a reason for urgent, disciplined action. He felt this deep, profound need to build stable, righteous communities that could serve God faithfully, right up until the very end. Okay, so where did he get all these ideas? You might think he was just inventing something brand new, but that's not it at all. Bugenhagen was actually looking back, way back, over 1,000 years for his inspiration. He was pulling from early church fathers like Cyprian of Carthage, who wrote this back in the 3rd century. Now, the episcopate is just a fancy word for the system of bishops and church leadership, and Cyprian's whole point was that good, unified order was absolutely essential for the health of the church. Unity, he said, needs structure. Now, listen to Bugenhagen's prayer again, but with that in mind. When you put his words right next to Cyprian's, you suddenly realize it's not just an emotional prayer from a sad friend. It's the continuation of a 1,300-year-old vision for a church that's held together by faithful service and good order. But here's the brilliant part. He didn't just copy the past, he adapted it. The early church model was very top-down, super hierarchical, with bishops calling all the shots. Bugenhagen's model kind of democratized that idea. He put the emphasis on the local pastor and the whole community working together to build a strong, ethical, and caring church from the ground up. So when you get the whole picture of the real Bugenhagen, the architect, the social reformer, the international organizer, it really changes how you see the Reformation itself. So here's the big takeaway. A revolutionary idea, as powerful as Luther's was, needs a brilliant system to survive. Bugenhagen's story is all about that hidden labor, the often uncelebrated, grinding work of organizing that actually makes a movement last. He's the guy who turned a fire into a hearth. He proves that building good systems and creating order isn't just boring administrative work, it's a core part of the mission itself. And that leaves us with one final thought, right? In our own world, in our own projects and movements, we always celebrate the visionary, the big idea person. But who are the Bugenhagens? Who are the organizers doing that patient, essential work of building the structures that allow those good ideas not just to spark, but to actually endure?